It's a little dispiriting to the fact that, like, as an American, as a patriotic American, the fact that we have the Europeans like flying here to beg our president to not be a surrender monkey. I mean, it hurts me as someone born in the 80s, who grew up believing that, America as the leader of the free world was something that I had some pride in. Clearly not the leader of the free world anymore. Hey, y'all, the Bulwark is heading on the road this fall, and we're starting off in Canada. That's right, Mounties, Tim Hortons, maple syrup. Might have some Seagram 7 on stage. We're going to have no fear of masked military police, tackling us and asking for our passports. And, most importantly, we get to support our friends up north as they combat Trump's stupid trade war. I'm ready to start singing "O Canada" right now. I'm so excited to do it. I've got Sarah Longwell with me and Canada's favorite Sam Stein. We're going to be there in September. For those of you that aren't up for stamping the passport, I get it. You can catch me, Sarah, and JVL in D.C. and New York in October as well. To get first dibs on tickets, sign up to become a Bulwark Plus member. You get access to a ticket pre-sale, and that's going to go live tomorrow on Tuesday. So come on. And you get all the other benefits of being a Bulwark Plus member. You get the Secret podcast on Friday. How are you surviving without the Secret podcast? So come on, become a Bulwark Plus member, get access to the pre-sale, and you'll be able to come hang out with us in Toronto, New York, or DC. If you aren't a member, that's okay too. There'll be tickets available on Wednesday, and more information will be available at thebulwark.com/events. That's thebulwark.com/events. Up next, it's Monday, so we got Bill Kristol. Hello and welcome to the Bulwark Podcast. I'm your host, Tim Miller. It is Monday, and even though he's on vacation, we've got editor-at-large Bill Kristol. He could not stay away from you guys. He is at the beach, and you might hear the what did Melania call it in the letter? The melodious laughter of children behind you as we talk. How you doing, Bill? Thanks for working on the weekend.
Good to be with you. I gave up the newsletter for the week, but when Tim Miller calls, you can't say no. So
you can't get rid of me. All right. Well, we've got obviously we'll spend most of the time on what is happening with the Russia-Ukraine-Trump negotiations. Zelensky appearing at the White House today, and kind of by the time this is out, that will be happening. So always a reminder that if it's as crazy as it was last time, you can check out the Bulwark Takes feed for instant reactions. But before we get to Ukraine, I want to talk about what's going on in D.C., especially, Bill, every once in a while you put something out there onto the internet on social media, and I'm getting out of my chair, hooting and hollering, because I agree so fervently. And so I figure that's a nice place to start. You posted this about the Democrats' response to what's happening in D.C. I want to congratulate leading Democrats for their insistence on saying the takeover of D.C. is a, quote, stunt or a, quote, distraction. It's a rare trifecta of intellectual failure, political stupidity, and moral obtuseness. And God, could I not agree more with this. But talk about what you mean and what you're seeing from D.C.
I guess I saw a couple of Democrats, one of them Senator Murphy, and it's a little unfair. We should take maybe a sentence out of context. And actually, your interview, very interesting at Podcast Friday with Hakeem Jeffries. And I don't want to criticize him by name, since we shouldn't criticize someone who's kind enough to come on the podcast just a couple of days ago. But he was a little bit in the distraction camp. I don't know. Why do these politicians just feel the need to even explain that? First of all, this isn't a stunt and a distraction, in my opinion. It's kind of important. And secondly, even if it were, just address the issue. I always get so annoyed when politicians are like trying to explain to voters what they should care about or not care about, because you might think it's a big deal when we deploy federal troops to DC and have videos of them behaving very badly and so forth. And Trump's inventing justifications, which are open-ended for the future, et cetera, et cetera. But you're wrong, because really what's important is the big bad bill, which doesn't go into effect for 18 months and, which already has been quite a lot of publicity. But the Democrats, that's their talking points. They were sent on break with their, talking points about Medicaid, and how could they be distracted by an actual federal takeover of our nation's capital? So I was annoyed.
Yeah, the federal takeover is bad on the merits as it is, and I want to talk about that in detail, including a video that we got from 14th Street that Sam Stein posted. But just on on the meta conversation here about how Democrats should talk about this and how anybody really that opposes this regime should talk about this. I've just become obsessed with this. I'm going on a one-man crusade. To borrow a phrase from Bill Simmons, please, can you turn the TikTok camera on? Because I have a message for the Democrats. Please stop calling things distractions and minimizing them. I don't really know where this started, but it's everywhere. It's endemic. They say that militarizing the nation's capital is a distraction. No, it is not. It is the core of the fight we're up against. They were saying the Putin summit is a distraction. No, like the liberal world order and a free Ukrainian people hang in the balance. This is not a distraction. It is the fight. And even things that are actual distractions, like the Sydney Sweeney ad or something, to think about them like that, to talk about them like that just makes you sound weird. Just like use them as opportunities to reach people and project your values. Like saying that you just agree that Sydney Sweeney has good genes and think that the freaks that are trying to tear the country apart over this ad are the weird ones is a much better response than being like, this is a distraction and I want to care about Medicaid. It's like, just talk like a normal fucking person, okay? You can talk about Epstein and Medicaid and Ukraine. Donald Trump is capable of doing this. Like, you don't see Donald Trump out there doing meta commentary about how the Democrats are trying to distract. Like, he just talks about everything. He just throws shit against the wall. That is what is happening. So that is what Democrats should do. They should fight them on everything. They should create distractions of their own. If they're not going to fight them on everything, at least fucking fight them when they're taking an interior police of masked thugs to harass your fellow citizens in the nation's capital in an attempt to seize power. Like, that is the time to fight. That is not the distraction. That is the fight that we have here. Like, in the so-called pro-democracy coalition, like they're doing an authoritarian takeover of the Capitol. Like, that's not a fucking distraction from Epstein and Medicaid cuts. Okay. Like, that is the fight. So anyway, that's my rant about this. Please tell your local Democratic politician. Do you know why how this happened? Do you know, like, what was the genesis of this?
It's a good. Someone should go look up, the uses of the word distraction, do a Google search or something. And but I agree with you totally. The Democrats have become sort of a meta. I like your formulation about this is a meta discussion, what we should be talking about instead of just talking about whatever's in the news and whatever issues are presented to you. But the Democrats have become kind of a meta party. Wouldn't you say? I found this in talking to Democratic donors over the last 5-6 months. Endless discussion about what should we be talking about? Should we be talking about this issue or that issue instead of just talking about the different issues, right? The Republicans don't fall for this much. They try a bunch of issues. Some of them go by the wayside because voters aren't interested or the issue resolves itself kind of, or they think it's a losing issue and they just kind of drop it. But they do address in their own crazy way and demagogic way the issues, right? And the Democrats think they can win by saying, well, that's not a real issue. Because the real issue is X. And say they changed when the Epstein thing began, and some of us, you and I, were saying that it's a very big issue. It could be a very big issue and a legitimate issue. That was the distraction. I was lectured by, as you were too, right? By many leading Democrats. Medicaid's the story, the big bad bill. We've got polls. 62% don't like the Medicaid. And then, it took like 3 weeks and a bunch of polls showing the public was quite interested in Epstein for the Democrats to decide Epstein's the issue. Then they decided DC's a distraction from Epstein, right? It's like, it's like everything's a distraction from everything else. God forbid they should actually just address an issue, Yes.
And also, just on the Epstein thing, just as a specific example, it's actually just more effective to say, hey, Donald Trump is doing this takeover of DC while he's also engaged in a cover-up of documents that expose his relationship to people running a massive child sex ring, right? Like, he's covering up his relationship there, and I'm upset about that, and we should expose those documents. That is a direct argument using the active voice about how this is bad that he's doing this. That's better to do than to try to be like, well, what people really should be talking about is Epstein. To make it like a media critique or like a pundit critique. Just like fucking critique the president for what he's doing, and you can critique him for two things at the same time. This stuff doesn't matter that much, but it is just it is annoying. And it contributes, I think, to the sense that the Democrats aren't like actually really fighting this stuff. That it's more of a academic exercise than it is a campaign doing politics.
Kind of a cousin to what you're talking about, I'd say, is the Democrats felt need to do a lot of throat clearing on something before addressing the issue at hand. So, well, we are concerned about crime, Tim, and there's too much of it, and we don't want to look like the party that's soft on crime. So we're now going to say again that we are really concerned about the crime, but it has been going down. Though still too high. Don't get me wrong. I mean, they can get to that if someone challenges them as not being tough on, as being soft on crime, but maybe they should begin with a direct critique, not with the 3 minutes of self-flagellating and self-excusing before they get to discussing the actual issue at hand,
Okay. Well, I'll follow my own advice here, and we'll get to the actual news now.
Okay.
But I needed to do a 10 minutes. I'm imploring people to stop with the fucking distractions. And almost always, by the way, the distractions. This is my final point. Now I'm doing a Sarah Longwell and another thing, and also, almost always the thing that they say is a distraction is the thing that people actually want to talk about. Right. So maybe it's best to engage on the topics that people actually want to talk about instead of saying we really shouldn't talk about the things that people are naturally talking about and are interested in. We should talk about this other thing instead. Moving on. On the actual outrage that is the DC takeover. Sam Stein posted on this on our Substack on YouTube over the weekend. There was a delivery driver on 14th Street. It's about a block and a half from Le Diplomat, where all the fancy Washingtonians like Bill Kristol have brunch. So, not exactly in the high crime neighborhood. And the guy's taken down off of his moped. He's tased. There's just a pile-on of masked, unidentified federal police, interior police going after this guy. They're so insane in the way that they treat him that one of the cops gets hurt. Well, I don't know if they're cops, actually. One of the whatever they are, gets injured by another one of the masked guys because they're all so rabid. And the people around are shouting at them like, "Who are you?" They won't say. One of them shouts back, "Liberals have ruined the country," which is really great behavior that you want from your, neutral federal law enforcement. DC police said it was not them. The White House put out a statement this morning about it. The moped driver was an illegal alien criminal from Venezuela with suspected gang affiliation and order of removal from the country. Upon his arrest, the illegal alien criminal resisted and a law enforcement officer suffered a concussion. It's we're just doing the same shit they did with the people they sent to El Salvador. It's like, okay, maybe, I don't know, but could you just, do normal police work and tell us who you are and who that is and what they did? But anyway, I don't know. And there's been some negative impacts of the DC economy. People, bars and restaurants empty this weekend. People are saying people don't want to go out. So I don't know. Bill, do you have any additional thoughts about what we're seeing in DC?
Yeah, I think the negative impact of the DC economy is probably a feature, not a bug, right? They're not unhappy to have a blue city get a little bit of pain and suffering from this effort. No, it's really striking. One other sort of example, again, or adjacent to what you're talking about, is so governors of Republican states have been sending in a couple of hundred of their National Guard people to deal with this crime wave in DC. The states from which they're sending the National Guard, I think Ohio and
West Virginia.
I noticed this, but Philip Bump actually did the research. I just guessed it. Of course, they have cities with higher crime rates than DC. And if they have such a problem with violent crime, they could deploy. They shouldn't probably do it either in their own state, because they should just fund their police departments better or have better, better law and order policies. But anyway, if they want to, if you're the governor of Missouri, why don't you worry about the crime rate in St. Louis, which is higher than the crime rate in DC? But no, they've got to, performatively send 200 National Guard to DC to show they're on board with Trump's effort, which is just really brings home how much it's about Trump exerting federal power over the nation's capital city. It's not about any empirical, dealing with crime at all.
Yeah, no, of course. And where they are in the city, like the maps of where shows that. Andrew Egger in the newsletter this morning that makes a good point as well, which is to your point about this as being a feature, not a bug. They want the violence. They want the cop violence in the street. The moped video they like, right?
Yep. Because
that's what they're doing. It's an intimidation tactic. It's not a real law enforcement effort, right? It's a marketing campaign and an authoritarian grab.
They sent a camera, I think, along with the 15 or 20 federal agents they sent to arrest the sandwich guy at his, apartment building in Northwest DC after he had volunteered, I think, to come in. And he wasn't resisting arrest. They knew who he was. And they wanted the video of all these, armed and, beefed up federal agents bravely assaulting this guy on his ninth floor, one bedroom apartment, whatever, a few blocks from our office.
Low level DOJ lawyer, a real danger to society. I meant to have a hoagie on hand today as like a sign of resistance here as part of my set. I need to look into that. I know that there's a difference of opinions about Sandwich Man around the Bulwark. But
I'm on the pro sandwich guy. Yeah. Pro
sandwich.
Subway needs to name a sandwich after him, and he's become a hero of the resistance. I think they've already dropped the felon. Patel, the FBI director, Kristol, listed that as one of the felonies that they've arrested someone for in their grand list of 16 mostly ridiculous felony arrests they'd made some night or 2 nights in D.C. with tiny, actually rather small number. But then I think didn't some judge say that's ridiculous? It's not a felony to throw a sandwich at someone.
Yes, correct. The judge did say that. Yeah, the sandwich resistance. I'm a part of it. The look, the last thing on this, and we'll get to a little bit at the end because I talk about midterms and potentially how this relates to that as well. But just in addition to just the fact that what we're seeing in DC is un-American and wrong, right? Again, masked, unnamed agents, taking out people with no due process, no individual rights, doing it to intimidate people, doing it to, now saying that they're going to continue this takeover conceivably even after, they have a legal rationale for it. And it's a model for what they want to do in other places, right? And like that is how this relates to the big ugly bill or whatever, right? Like they have the funding, they're going to have additional funding for this. They're looking for pretext to do it other places. And if it's not fought back against aggressively in DC in the way that, the deportation plans, El Salvador or whatever, were fought back against. So you can see like these people do fold if they see resistance. And if they see that it's a political loser, they will not expand this to other cities. And so it's important that it's made to be a political loser. I think that's the other reason why the distraction thing frustrates me. Like it needs to be taken on now because they intend to expand their remit.
Agreed.
I take your silence for concurrence. Okay,
totally.
Great. Wonderful. The children behind also agree. Cheering. I can hear cheering.
Totally with you. The children are pro Tim. They're pro Tim. They're a pro sandwich guy too. Yeah.
All right, let's go to the summit. I want to go with what's happening today for a second. Let's just look back. You had Edelman on Sunday. I ripped off several rants on YouTube about what we saw in Alaska, but I haven't talked to you since it happened. I don't think. No, we talked right before. We kind of talked in the middle. We talked after the red carpet had been rolled out for Putin, and our soldiers were made to kneel at the base of Vladimir Putin's plane. But I've not spoken to you since. Kind of the joint statement from Putin and Trump, which was very Russian and just the style of how it went. Putin spoke first. There were no questions taken. It was all stuff that was very common for people who watch Russian quote unquote press conferences, but it was very unlike traditional Trump press conferences and American press conferences. And then in the ensuing period, we've seen a bunch of leaks about what was being discussed and about Trump's convos with our supposed allies afterwards. So before we get into what's happening today, like what were you and Eric's big takeaways?
I think Friday. Eric was open to the proposition as it was happening that much as one disliked the optics and the red carpet and stuff, that maybe the thing was a nothing burger. But I think he became much more convinced after following it closely, reading the Russian press, reading European reactions in particular, talking to people from Europe who had been briefed on what had happened. That it was actually bad. I mean, that there really was a kind of Trump, Putin lectured Trump. Trump didn't push back. And I think you see that in Trump's comments since the summit, right? Including the Hannity interview, which was just Friday night, but then subsequent Truth Social posts and so forth. He's sort of on board the Putin agenda. Best case was that that it would be a failed summit, and maybe that Trump would hold it a little bit against Putin. I think it's the opposite. It's sort of a failed summit. Trump knows that. And he'll be annoyed at Zelensky today. I worry. I just think that's the fact, probably. And he doesn't seem to be pressuring Putin in any way, right? He gave up on the ceasefire. He's given up on territorial integrity of Ukraine. Not a word, God forbid, about the continued assaults on Ukrainian civilians, which have marked this past weekend. They were sort of going on almost as the summit was happening. So it was a bad night in Alaska, and we'll see what happens today in the Oval Office.
I was out and about this weekend in New Orleans, and I had some of my less stylish friends asking me about what the truth was about this perfect gene. Is that something they should look into? Is that something they should try? And my response was, obviously, what? You think I'm fucking on here endorsing jeans I don't like? Jeans are central to my self-identity. I mean, look at all my jean shirts. This brand, the Perfect Jean, is actually perfect. It's real denim, but not that heavy, stiff, suffocating fabric. It's lighter, softer, stretchier, but still durable and just better. Some of you are hard to shop for because you might be in between sizes or not know exactly what the size is. Well, the Perfect Jean gives you so many options. They got waist sizes from 26 to 52, lengths from 26 to 38, and 6 different fits from skinny, my preference, to thick. I was able to easily find jeans that fit my body, try out some new different cuts, see if I want to get into the dad jean mindset. No matter what you're looking for, they've got something for you. For limited time, our listeners get 15% off their first order plus free shipping at theperfectjean.nyc, or Google The Perfect Jean and use code BULWARK15 for 15% off. It's not just their jeans. Perfect Jeans also has a collection of other things that'll have you covered. They've got tees and polos that are buttery, soft, stylish, and perfect for layering. And the Perfect Jean always has free shipping, exchanges, and returns. You can have peace of mind knowing that your order is completely risk-free. It's finally time to stop wearing uncomfortable jeans by going to theperfectjean.nyc. Our listeners get 15% off your first order plus free shipping, free returns, and free exchanges when you use code BULWARK15 at checkout. That's 15% off for new customers at theperfectjean.nyc with promo code BULWARK15. After your purchase, they'll ask you where you heard about them. Please support our show and tell them we sent you. Fuck your khakis and get the Perfect Jean. Laying the groundwork for where we're at as we come in today, because it does. I share Eric's kind of trajectory on that, where watching it live, it's like, okay, well, maybe this was just kind of one of those meetings that could have been an email type situations where like nothing really happens. But as we learned what they kind of talked about in private, and then Trump's call to Zelensky, and then now Trump's public statements afterwards with Hannity, and then on social media, you're seeing that he's basically reverted back to where he was whenever that was, a couple months ago, when they were berating Zelensky in the Oval. And so just to kind of lay the groundwork for that, the meeting that is today in the White House, Zelensky this time has learned that he needs some muscle. He needs some heavies with him. So Macron, Starmer, Merz, Germany, Stubb from Finland, who I guess Trump likes for some reason, Maloney from Italy are all with him. JD, on the other hand, will attend. So we'll see what Trump's heavy does. It should be important to note that overnight, there's a Russian strike in Kharkiv, killing 6, including 2 children, leaving 20 injured. A lot of video from that going out. So the Russians are not, slowing down their attacks on civilians at all. And then I think most telling was this Trump bleat from yesterday ahead of the meeting. President Zelensky of Ukraine can end the war with Russia almost immediately if he wants to, or he can continue to fight. Remember how it started. No getting back. Obama given Crimea 12 years ago. And no, all caps, no going into NATO by Ukraine. Some things never change. So, again, and that posture is just basically, Zelensky, you need to fold. And you need to wave the white flag and understand that you're not going to have a self-government going forward that can choose to align militarily with countries that you think might support you. And that's really where it comes down to. But I think that's where we are this morning.
Yeah, I mean, Trump's no going into NATO undercuts what some people were taking a little hope from. Witkoff saying something about security guarantees, even like Article 5. Well, that's literally what NATO is. And Trump is basically ruling out any kind of serious security guarantee, let alone whether it would actually ever be enforced the way other ones that Putin has signed on to haven't been enforced. So that part
let's just sit on that point for a second and get to this, because this struck me as well. Marco was also doing the rounds this weekend where he was saying this. Like, he was like, look, there's going to be real security guarantees in writing, etc. And there's just, you can't square those two things, right? That, like, there's no going into NATO by Ukraine, but there will be real security guarantees. And like, the whole point of NATO is that it's a security guarantee. How is the U.S. going to provide a security guarantee to Ukraine without it looking like essentially something like Article 5, where if Russia attacks Ukraine, America will defend it? Like, what's the difference? Because like that's the whole point of why he doesn't want Ukraine to be in NATO, because he doesn't want Ukraine to have security guarantees, right? It doesn't make sense.
Yeah, we could have a bilateral security guarantee with Ukraine the way we do with Japan or something, a defense treaty. We can station troops there the way we do with Japan and South Korea. I don't think Trump's really on board for that. And the Witkoff thing is so insane. If we had an Article 5 relationship with Ukraine, we would be committed to fighting to help them defeat Russia, which I don't think Trump has. He won't even give them arms, let alone obviously talk about, any kind of U.S. involvement. So no, it's totally fake, I think, the security guarantee thing. And so that's that was sort of the talking point they used to try to pacify some critics like us, but I don't think it has lasted very long, obviously. On the Europeans, Eric's in touch with them. He was an ambassador to Finland. He actually, the Finns have done the current Finnish president has done a very good job of sort of buttering up Trump, I think in a hard-headed way and in a way that's consistent with Finnish national interests and NATO's interests.
Is he the one that's been golfing with him?
He's a very good golfer. Apparently he was a varsity golfer at Clemson or something. He went to college here. Okay. I don't know if it's Clemson, but something like that. And so he's played golf several times with Trump, and I'm sure he lets Trump win. And
Furman, important difference. Furman.
Sorry, I don't want to offend.
LSU has Clemson.
I don't want to offend the South Carolinians watching here. Yeah, how can I confuse those two? Yeah, he probably lets Trump, cheat and win a little bit in golf, and so he's done his duty. I mean, it is amazing how far the Europeans have gone. I've got to say, it's obviously distasteful in a way, but I give them credit. They're serious. They don't want Ukraine to lose, and they're willing to swallow an awful lot of pride and dignity, you might almost say, in dealing with this clown we have as our president of the United States, unfortunately. But I'm gathered the Europeans, Zelensky may have asked them to come, but I think a lot of them volunteered to come. I mean, it is really astounding. It's one thing to have one, maybe von der Leyen, the EU commissioner show up, or one of them kind of come with an effective mandate from the others.
I should mention that she is also going there. I didn't include her on the list. And
no, but from Macron and Merz and Starmer, it's like, it's a NATO summit in effect in the Oval Office, which is a real attempt, which they see which incidentally totally confirms your view in your excellent, analyses that you did over the weekend. And then Eric Edelman's view that this was a very bad summit in Alaska. They wouldn't be that alarmed if they hadn't gotten readouts that alarmed them. They're not, they don't like just hop on planes to come to the U.S. for, if it's just, hey, meeting, let's go fun meeting in the Oval.
It was just a nothing burger. Was the initial thought. Then there would, by definition, not be anything for them to jump to do. They've been really good. I kind of astonishingly good, to be honest. Most all of them. I mean, I think Starmer's got some domestic issues maybe you should focus on, but like Macron, Merz, even Meloni has been surprisingly good. We were very concerned that she was going to be more kind of in the Orban camp and has not been. So, I mean, it's a little dispiriting to the fact that, like, as an American, as a patriotic American, the fact that we have the Europeans, like, flying here to beg our president to not be a surrender monkey. I mean, it hurts me as someone born in the 80s, who grew up believing that, America as the leader of the free world was something that I had some pride in. Clearly not the leader of the free world anymore.
Eric and I were talking a little bit before the show, and Eric was in the Foreign Service for 3 decades and very senior, obviously ambassador, very senior positions, Under Secretary of Defense. And he said, the one consistent theme was us trying to put meetings. He was in, as he said, hundreds, maybe thousands of meetings, trying to push European allies to do more, to step up, to be a little tougher minded, not to fall for some Russian propaganda stunt, way back into the 80s with the deployment of the medium range missiles and a million instances, obviously. And even in my 4 years in government, obviously a lot of that. And here we are, the opposite. Yeah, as you say, it's heartening that the Europeans have done this, but one has to root for I don't want to root for the Europeans against the American president exactly, but certainly the European.
Pretty close.
Yeah, the European leaders are much closer to the core, mission of defending liberty and helping our allies than the American president is. So but look, I hope they succeed, honestly, just for the sake of Ukraine, obviously, and for the world, and to stop Putin. I don't know. Trump's, I don't know. We'll see. I'm worried that Trump is a little more dug in than Who knows? Who knows?
Yeah, I mean, Trump is it's important to remember that Trump is a coward that doesn't like to make big decisions like this. Like fundamentally, he wants everybody to like him, which has been like that, trait. The fact that Fred didn't hug him and tell him that he loved him as a child has been the thing that has saved us from the worst case outcome in a couple of different areas, I think, over this decade. But the hope, right, is that it's just this: Trump is responsive to the last person that talks to him type thing. And he was susceptible to Putin's flattery, and then now he'll be susceptible to whatever, Ruta calling him daddy again, and maybe that'll buy them a couple more months. Like, that's a pretty sad place to be. That's like the best case hope, right? That is what happens. You buy more time. Trump hears the other perspective, is convinced that it's, Putin that's trying to snub him. He doesn't want to seem like he's whatever, getting pushed over. But in the other, and the thing that we've been worried about from the start is that eventually this thing comes to a head where Trump really has convinced himself that it's up to Zelensky to give up, like that is the way for this to end. And that if he refuses, then he's not doing what Trump wishes. And then Trump just takes his ball and goes home. Right. And it's just like, good luck. You guys take your, and I think that's the negative scenario that, who knows what comes out of today.
Right. Or just that drifting on, doing nothing, but not providing serious assistance to Ukraine. Also, ultimately, it's hard for Ukraine to sustain it. But they have, I got to say, I think back in January, February, when we were correctly very alarmed, one piece of the alarm was that Ukraine couldn't sustain it without a fresh infusion of arms and support, even over the next 4 or 5 months. And there, in that respect, Ukraine's doing better than we expected. And Russia is probably weaker than we thought, actually, and which makes it all the more infuriating that Trump is kind of propping up this dictator who's suffering terrible casualties, has fought the war brutally, but kind of idiotically, actually, and maybe susceptible to real pressure, right? But whatever, that's Lindsey Graham, that sanctions bill, 85 co-sponsors. It's any moment coming now, I mean, the degree to which these people who do know better, leave aside Rubio, which is beyond, but Lindsey Graham types, they're not ever willing. Are they ever going to? No, I guess why am I even asking this rhetorical question?
No. John Thune.
Forget that I even began that question.
John Thune's planning on bringing that bill to the floor tomorrow. He's got to wash his hair. He's got a big week. Maybe next week that bill will come to the floor. We'll see. Yeah, I don't gain much hope. Similarly, how it feels silly at this point to even say, when will the Republican senators show spine? It also feels silly to say this, but it's like, how we even got into this bizarro world where the president of the United States, the vice president, and a huge swath of the country just like accepts the insane perspective that Zelensky it's incumbent on Zelensky to be the one to end the war right now, where it's like, no, there actually is a person that can end the war, and it's Putin. And like, that is the person that they refuse to put an iota of pressure on to try to do it. And, it's just this total kind of bizarro world assessment of what is happening that undergirds, our entire idiotic strategic positioning when it comes to these negotiations. So anyway, we'll see what happens today. I want to talk to you about the mail-in ballot stuff. Here's what Trump said this morning on Truth Social. I'm going to lead a movement to get rid of mail-in ballots. And also, while we're at it, highly, quote, inaccurate, very expensive, and seriously controversial voting machines. With their horrible radical left policies, blah, 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 Democrats are virtually unelectable without using completely disproven mail-in scam. Elections can never be honest with mail-in ballots voting. Okay, well, this to me is like extremely ominous. And I hate, Trump sends out a lot of crazy bleats. Like, we don't analyze every single one of them. But I should just mention, among the states with all mail-in voting, my home state, Colorado, California, Nevada, Oregon, Utah, a lot of these states are places where Democrats probably are looking to pick up seats, certainly in California and Colorado and Nevada, and depending on how things shake out in Utah with the potential court fights, maybe Utah. This is just straight back to Stop the Steal 2020 stuff, like laying the groundwork, like the writing is on the wall. You do not need, this is not bluster. You don't need to read through the lines. He's just absolutely saying that he is starting to lay the groundwork for if the Democrats win the House next year, they will call it rigged and fight it and use every power they can to not seat people that come in these states that have mail-in voting. I don't think there's any other way to read this.
I'd go a little further. I think there's laying the groundwork for acting in the summer or spring to stop states from actually using mail-in ballots, including not only the all mail-in states, all mail states you mentioned, but here in Virginia, we have pretty generous early voting, pretty easy mail-in, and then obviously same-day voting. I've done all three in the last several cycles, depending on where I am on election day and the like. Glenn Youngkin won the governorship here in Virginia in 2021. The Republican slate won all three statewide offices. There's no one's ever said anything. It's like zero problems, I mean, literally zero. And Democrats have, however, gotten more used to mail-in voting and use it a little more. So stopping it would presumably help Republicans. I was struck, I think there's a draft executive order here at the beach. I haven't followed it quite as closely, but I saw some texts about this executive order. And one of the things he apparently says in passing, the 50 states, are agents of the federal government somehow in this respect in conducting the elections. That is really ominous, that we have a very federalist election system. Obviously, the way it's conducted in one state isn't the same as others. Some are all mail-in, some are very restricted mail-in, and so forth, different voting hours, different this and that, some basic federal requirements, obviously 18-year-old vote and non-discrimination and requirements and the like. But that's it. He's laying the groundwork for a federal takeover of a lot of our elections, or as much of it as they need to either distort the results, challenge the results afterwards and throw them out, as you say. I mean, you could imagine the Republican House refusing to recognize certain results in certain states, as you were saying. And then obviously for 2028, with a bigger runway to this, a huge attempt to put a major thumb on the scale of the actual conduct of the election, as well as the counting of the ballot. So I think this is really, I need to study up more on this, and maybe we can talk more about it next week. I mean, we'll see exactly what he's ordering or not ordering. And they're talking about perhaps even legislation that the compliant Republican Congress might pass next year. Apparently, there's some internal debate. One of the text chains someone said whether they can do this all by executive order, president's the president, Article 2, or they're going to try to get legislation to curb states' ability to shape their own election procedures within certain limits, obviously, which is the way it is now. But I think, all in all, and then you put it together with DC, if I can loop back to that for a second.
Yeah, just before we go back to DC, let me read, because here's what he said about the executive order, because I want to loop back to DC too. We don't have the actual text yet, but here's what he wrote about it. An executive order to help bring honesty to the 2026 midterm elections. Remember, the states are merely an agent for the federal government in counting and tabulating the votes. They must do what the federal government, as represented by the President of the United States, tells them for the good of our country to do.
Wow, that's even worse than I realized. So that set off, for what it's worth, huge alarm bells in this one text chain I'm on with very sophisticated election lawyer types. They see where this is going. And the term that seems a little innocuous, if you're a civilian agent of the federal government, what does that mean? Is really a code for take over, and something that's not been considered to be the case, right? There's been huge deference to the states.
Yeah, I don't remember Madison. Is that in the Federalist Papers that the federal government, that the states must do exactly what the federal government tells them for the good of the country? Is that?
Yeah, I mean, there are areas where the federal government obviously trumps the states, interstate commerce and stuff. But that's why it sets off such alarms, because this would be turning the states into agents in this area in ways that has not been the case before, and is very dangerous, and especially, and then Trump, and it's not the federal government, what does he say? As exemplified by me, the President of the United States, or something?
As represented by the President of the United States.
So the President just gets to decide how our elections are. He doesn't like what's happening in Virginia. There's too many mail ballots showing up. He just voids them, I suppose, right? I mean, I don't think that's, incidentally, that sounds alarmist and crazy. I don't think that's at all beyond.
I don't either. You make one of the points you made there that I just want to sit on for a second, because I think it's really right, is even if they fail on the maximalist version of this, right, like some federal takeover, and who the hell knows, like, well, I guess with the DC stuff, we'll get into what the net maximalist version of this might look like. At the smaller level, as you say, because of the disinformation that Trump and others have been putting out and the conspiracy theories, the type of voter that votes MAGA doesn't usually use the mail anymore, right? Like they've bought into a lot of these conspiracy theories. And so, this is why on election nights you see these things where you have these huge dumps one way or the other, because now these days you didn't used to see, because Republicans vote in one manner, Democrats vote in another manner. So if you look to the midterms, it's not just in blue states that like Democrats are poised to pick up seats, right? Like they are, poised to, I think, potentially gain also in some of the red areas. I mean, just like off the top of my head, like the Nebraska Don Bacon district with him retiring would be one example. So now, in those states, you could, who knows, monkey with the rules. Again, at the smallest level, you could just change the rules to make mail-in balloting harder, which makes it harder for Democrats to vote. At maybe the next level up of nefariousness, there could just be an intense level to challenge mail-in ballots, where those are, so it's a close election. Those are looked at much more closely and thrown out on technicalities much more closely than ballots are. And then obviously there's even more chicanery than that they could get into. To me, like that at this point is like the minimum that we can now expect to happen.
No, I think that's right. And I think if you add to that the more sort of racially inflected ways in which they could also do things within states. Philadelphia's got a particular problem with some of these mail-in ballots because, we've seen in the past a higher rate of challenge. So we're just going to maybe other central Pennsylvania, fine, but Pennsylvania, super strict scrutiny in certain areas, right, which coincide with Democratic votes and minority population and stuff. So I think the degree of monkeying around that can happen once you open this door as widely as Trump wants to, is really alarming.
On the DC point, again, now as we get more towards the maximalist scary side of this, again, why stuff has to be fought now. Like this is another thing that is absolutely on their mind as far as something they're plotting, which is, if there are protests about new election rules, if there are, if some during the early voting, you remember this during 2020 where there'd be like a video of them moving a box the wrong way, and some MAGA account would look at it and say, "Oh, this is evidence that they traded out one box with the other," right? Like all this stuff starts to come out during early voting, and they use these things as pretext and rationale to send in federal troops, National Guard troops to guard voting places, maybe particularly in blue areas, to intimidate people, to prevent them from coming. There's just a whole range of potential threats on that vector as well. And I think that the combination of DC and this executive order around mail-in balloting, it lays the groundwork for that pretty clearly.
And for real, really dangerous things. The governor of Virginia might say, we don't need any help in 2026 if it's Abigail Spanberger, even conceivably if it's Glenn Youngkin or whoever the Republican is. Sears.
Winsome Sears.
But probably Spanberger. But as this is where the Ohio and other states, West Virginia and Missouri National Guard showing up in D.C., I think it's a little unclear to whom they're reporting now, to their own governor or to the Defense Department. There's complicated issues of how the National Guard works. But the idea that, if Governor Spanberger says we don't need to mobilize the Virginia National Guard, I'm not doing it. And Trump says, well, actually, the West Virginia National Guard's volunteered to come in to help make sure that the elections in inner city Richmond are really legit. You could get showdowns between different states. But again, this is why I think it's interesting that they've clearly gone out of their way to encourage these Republican governors to send in, a couple of hundred. It's not really changing anything, you might say, National Guard from their states, but they want to establish that predicate that even if the governor is not friendly to them, or the state legislature is not friendly to them, they can call on other states to provide for. And they don't, in addition to what the forces they can unilaterally deploy, I suppose, the federal forces, they can call on other states to help out, so to speak.
All right, Bill, I'll let you get back to the beach. For our YouTube viewers, I'll show this, and we'll put the link in the show notes for listeners that want to see it. I meant to get to this during our Russia section. The image of the day, I guess, when we're talking about how dispiriting it was, that we're just hoping for our European friends to save us and to give us a backbone. The other dispiriting image from this morning was, have you seen this? The Russian tank that was moving into Ukraine, Zaporizhia. Is that right? No. Is that how you say that? The Russian tank that was going to storm Ukrainian positions there in eastern Ukraine was waving two flags above it, a Russian and an American side by side. So it tells you what the Russians think about the state of play. So I don't know, Bill. I'll leave you with that.
That's a horrifying note to leave on. I'll go out to the beach and try to forget that blessed image. That really is terrible.
Turn off the phone. You don't need to watch the Oval Office today. We'll give you the highlights, and we'll be back next week, hopefully still aligned with the West and not with Putin. We'll see how that turns out. Everybody else will be back here tomorrow for another edition of the Bulwark Podcast. See y'all then. Peace.